After the great cinematic event that was Barbenheimer comes yet another fascinating box office battle this weekend. Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon versus Taylor Swift's Eras Tour. Our first contender, Killers of the Flower Moon, an epic Western crime drama, comes from one of the greatest and most respected filmmakers of all time, Martin Scorsese. Despite sitting at a lengthy 3 hours and 26 minutes, the film's rave reviews at its Cannes premiere earlier this year has prompted Oscars buzz that will undoubtedly draw in a crowd this weekend and beyond. In contrast, the summer of Taylor Swift has carried on into October, with her sold-out concert tour taking on the cinematic big screen, already hitting record box office numbers since its opening on October 13th. Swifties of all sorts are piling into cinemas to sing and dance along to her pop hits. Of course, on paper, these two films are not direct competitors, and comparing a narrative Western drama film to a pop concert film can only be like comparing apples to oranges. But while both cater to very different audiences, both in their unique ways draw in the crowds, which is absolutely crucial when it comes to the survival of cinemas. Because, let's be honest, cinemas as we know them today are an endangered species. After the drop in attendance during COVID, coupled with the rising popularity of streaming platforms, cinemas are struggling to convince audiences to come back. Although Barbie, Super Mario Bros., and Oppenheimer have been widely successful this year, bringing in $1.43 billion, $1.36 billion, and $940 million respectively, theater attendance is still significantly below pre-pandemic levels. Streaming has also caused a shrinking of the theatrical window, from 90 days pre-pandemic to an average of 30 days in 2023. Which has affected both scheduling, like with Barbenheimer, and cinema revenues. Let's talk numbers. Most films make 75% of their total box office revenues in their first 17 days in a cinema. This statistic was published by Deloitte in 2020, during the pandemic and before the shrinking of the theatrical window, meaning that films could remain up to 73 days in the cinema to rack up the remaining 25% of box office revenues. Another point of reference here is that distributors take home approximately 55% of the share of box office revenues, and approximately 80% of streaming revenues. Now, when we do the math, before the pandemic, when theater attendance was still relatively high, distributors kept screening their films for longer, because they still made more money despite the smaller revenue share they get from cinemas. But now, with current consumers favoring streaming over going to the cinema, it means that to maximize the money a film makes, it's better to follow the crowd and shrink the theatrical window in favor of pushing up streaming. But this shift in distribution strategy is disastrous for cinemas. Cinemas aren't just losing the remaining box office revenues. They're also losing the remaining audiences coming into their venues and buying food and drink to enjoy with their movie. And food and drink make up a really big proportion of a cinema's revenues. So at this point, cinemas have completely lost their bargaining power, and they're unlikely to be able to continue like this for much longer. Enter Taylor Swift. In early-stage talks with studios about distributing the Eras Tour film, Taylor's team were presented with in-depth distribution strategies, detailing both theatrical and streaming plans. But surprisingly, it seemed that Taylor and her team weren't too interested in the plans beyond a theatrical release. The reason being that the film was made for Swifties, who weren't able to get a ticket to the tour. The film provides them another chance to see the concert. Instead of continuing with studio executives to distribute the film, Taylor and her team ended up bypassing distributors completely and worked directly with AMC to screen her film not only in AMC cinemas, but 8,500 cinemas across 100 countries. By talking directly to AMC, Taylor was also able to dictate when and how the film would be screened. The Eras Tour is only screened on weekends to ensure that cinemas are full, just like a stadium experience. Fans are also encouraged to dress up, sing, and dance along during the show to mimic the feeling of being at a concert. In that way, the Eras Tour film is not just a concert film. It's an immersive concert experience, giving each and every audience member a front row seat to see Taylor Swift performing on stage. It breaks the rules of cinema, and instead taps into the psychology of fandoms, prompting the positive feelings that people get from gathering and expressing their shared passion. And this rule-breaking is working out really well for cinemas. The Eras Tour concert film has already broken box office records in its first weekend, well on its way to an estimated 200 to 250 million overall revenue. And so, unlike Barbenheimer, this weekend's battle between Killers of the Flower Moon and the Eras Tour is not really a battle between films and their filmmakers. Instead, when we take a closer look, this weekend is a shifting of tides, a content battle, determining what type of entertainment best satisfies the modern audience, causing us to question the very existence of cinemas as we know them now. Are cinemas for the cinephiles who would sit through a film lasting over 200 minutes? Or are cinemas for the mainstream, providing accessible, immersive experiences that entertain and foster shared experiences? These questions and their answers will undoubtedly determine the future of cinema as we know it. But what do you think about this new evolution of the cinematic experience? And will you go see the Eras Tour or Killers of the Flower Moon? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more spiels in the future.